Afternoon, guys. Thanks very much for coming back from the last break. Appreciate we're getting nearer and nearer the end of the day. I'm sure there are some wandering eyes that are starting to look at that bar, looking at the big selection of whiskey and rum up there, and maybe someone snuck a beer or two in here. Hopefully not. Hopefully you don't need a beer to get through this last session before we pass over to Fred. We've had so many good sessions today. I'm very confident this one will be even better than all the rest, and we'll show all of them up. Yeah, Dave's done a great job of introducing yourself already, Will. The session today, we're joined by Will and Gavin, who are sat the other way around than I thought they were going to, so I nearly said that the wrong way. Before introducing them and diving in, just to say hello myself, I'm James, part of the sales team here. I'm going to try and be as quiet as possible during this, as no one wants to hear what someone from the sales team has to say, and get these guys involved instead. So before we start, I will pass over to yourself, Will, to do a little intro.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name's Will Clayton. I was given a promotion then before I joined. I never made it to CTO at Boohoo. I was head of technology, though, for product and pricing, so I did look after both implementing PIM at Keneo back in 2020, 2021, and then from that point onwards, also looking after our pricing systems, how we order products, and how we get those onto the websites. That culminated in the coolest named product I ever came up with at Boohoo, which was called Thundercat, which was what we used to categorize and publish to multiple different storefronts and marketplaces and all the different channels and things, hence why I'm on the stage today. I left Boohoo earlier in the year, in spring, and I've now joined Ant Digital, so I've moved from being a customer to being a partner, which is great. I still get to play around with the Keneo and be associated and come to events like this.
Perfect. And yourself, mate?
And I'm Gavin, as it says on the slide there. So I've spent the better part of 20 years across marketing and e-commerce. And the first half of that was primarily focused on getting customers to our products. And latterly, the focus has been very much on focusing on getting more customers to purchase more frequently. My current role at Roxor Group, who are one of the UK's leading manufacturers of bathroom fixtures and fittings, is essentially evolved around bringing all of our customer data together, centralising and optimising that, because as you can see on the slide there, there's a multitude of retailers, merchants, and self-employed plumbers. They're essentially using our product information to sell on to end consumers, which we've been going through a very interesting integration over the course of the last 6 or 7 months with Keneo. It's been a lot of fun. It's given a lot of benefits to the business for each of these channels that we're seeing here, of which hopefully we'll go into more of that soon.
Perfect. And yeah, just to dive in, so the session today, we have channeling success, which I don't know if that's a little bit of a pun on the idea of channels or not. If it isn't, it is now. But more specifically, ideas and strategies for selling on retailers, with retailers, and on marketplaces, as you've just touched on there, Gavin. So I think it'd be really cool to have both of you coming at this from slightly different points of view. One former customer, now partner, and one relatively new customer of Keneo. So, have we got the wrong slide on? We do have the wrong slide. Apologies.
You went backwards, not forwards.
So, to dive in, different channels, direct-to-consumer, wholesale retailers, third-party marketplaces. Why marketplaces?
Why do it? Why marketplaces? I kind of think there's three broad reasons why you look at marketplaces. One of those is growth, one is reach, and one is diversification. So in my time at Boohoo, most of Boohoo sales come on own brand websites. So Boohoo Group has 13 brands, and then one of those, Debenhams, is itself a marketplace as well, and it sells from both the internal brands but also third parties as well. But if you're selling a product on boohoo.com, you're selling to a certain customer base, 16 to 30-year-olds, 16 to 25-year-olds. The Debenhams consumer is generally slightly older. So actually, by having a marketplace, not necessarily Debenhams, but any marketplace, you can go and expand that demographic that you're going after. So you get a bit of extra reach in who you can target. Another part to it as well would be if you're a smaller brand or if you're a UK-based brand and you're looking at how you're going to internationalize, it gives you a foothold in a market that otherwise you'd find it difficult to do, or you have to spend a lot of money setting up your own websites and infrastructure to do. So you can almost tap into an existing market through a marketplace which exists in another country. So in Boohoo, we had over time partnerships with retailers and wholesalers and marketplaces in the Middle East and in the Far East where it was more difficult to go and enter those markets from an own brand website perspective. And if they worked, you can expand from there. And the diversification point being that actually there's certain customers who are shopping specifically for a brand, and there's other customers who are looking for a particular type of product, but the brand is, at that point, less important to them. So we had Karl Lagerfeld up earlier today. And if I know I want something that's Karl Lagerfeld, I might go to karl.com. But if I know I want something which is a nice leather handbag or something from a designer, but I'm not particularly picky, I might go to Farfetch, or I might go to My Teresa. So you can capture a market of consumers who are perhaps less brand aware of your brand and they're going somewhere else. So in that sort of fashion accessories world, there's kind of those kind of three reasons. I think Gavin's probably got some other ones as well, because obviously bathrooms are a slightly different product to what I'm used to dealing with.
Ultimately, you've mopped a lot of it up there. It comes down to removing complexity, being able to move fast into a market. If you sell a product on Amazon, there's a market that already exists, there's a consumer base that's already there, so you can put products in and be able to test products. There's lots of upsides to be able to work with marketplaces, primarily is all around growth. Obviously, you lose some of that control over the customer and the customer journey and the brand experience, but you get access to an instant market with less of the setup cost and time that it requires to set up and establish a website within various different markets.
Okay, cool. What drove that need to change? Obviously, we've spoken about the benefits of why we might look to marketplaces or retailers. What was that moment for maybe for yourself at Roxor, or maybe I know you mentioned previously that this is maybe the second time you've been down this journey. What was kind of that moment that you felt drove the need to change from a D2C model?
So at ByteDirect, Roxor Group is primarily, it's not primarily, it is a B2B model. So we have some relationships with Amazon when it comes to vendor, when it comes to Wayfair. Previously at ByteDirect Group, so appliances direct, laptops direct, better bathrooms, furniture 123, etc. The reason we moved into marketplaces was that growth element. We had a very large range of OEM products that we didn't necessarily want to put on an Amazon because it creates competition. If you've got products that are sat on your own website, you don't want to be competing with yourself across other channels, or you want to do it in such a way. So most of the time, the reason for expanding those products onto various different marketplaces came around minimum order quantities that we were coming across with factories that we were buying products in from. If we could expand our sales channels, we could buy more products because we knew we'd be able to sell through them in with the time that we needed to, which allowed us to start bringing the cost price down so we could be a lot more competitive. So ultimately, Will's touched on it already, it was growth that took us into that. There's an active market there already to be able to test these products out and see what does and doesn't work.
For sure. And a bit you touched on there is around the conflict.
Yes.
Pushing out to Amazon, are you just moving your customer from your own website potentially over to a marketplace where maybe you're losing a bit of margin, you're losing some of that control? Or is it not conflict? Is it a case of growth by getting high and wide? What are the challenges that come with that potentially?
Ultimately, you do get some overlap. There is some overlap, and you can see that within comms from customers. But for the most part, there's a market there, there's a market there. Yes, there's an overlap, but there's a lot of incremental sales that come within it. And it's about just being able to measure it and be able to take smart decisions around individual products or individual categories. I would never personally take a category that doesn't exist on Amazon and place it on Amazon. Whereas if there's products already on Amazon and they're selling, I want to play a part of that market. I want to put products into that market. I want to be able to move fast. And if somebody comes off, I almost want to take that product off there. If there's somebody with a SKU on there right now, a branded SKU, I want to try and beat them and take their business. But if they drop off, I potentially want to be able to remove that product from the marketplace there as well, so that anybody looking for that particular product or that particular spec isn't necessarily going to be able to find it. Yes, you get a lot of customers browsing for Amazon and going to the app first, But you can see, a couple of years ago, Amazon didn't advertise on Google Shopping. They now heavily advertise on Google Shopping, so do eBay. So a lot of these marketplaces are generating traffic from the same locations as yourself, even though they've got very large pools of customers that they're able to remarket to.
So you see it more as a complementary rather than a conflict, potentially?
Mix of both, but it depends on the individual product.
Okay. And touching on that again there, so the individual product, even got it right the first time. Is it a case then of not only putting the right products in the right places, but also maybe tailoring the messaging that's going out in each of those channels?
Absolutely. And I think you saw in the way that Boohoo approaches it with, say, Debenhams and Boohoo.com or its own brands. Actually, when you think about the messaging to one market compared to another, or if you're selling a premium product on your own brand versus a far-fetched type of example, how you message that product for the audience who are going to that website, for whether that's based on demographics or geography, or whether it's because if you're selling your brand on a marketplace that has multiple brands, how much of the brand message do you also need to add into your product? Whereas when you're on your own brand website, you don't need to keep repeating that point. You've got to remember when you're on a marketplace, your competition's there as well. So you're selling your brand as much as you're selling your product. Whereas if they're on your brand already, that message is it's kind of already done. So you don't need to kind of labour that point too much.
Okay, so we've kind of touched on a couple of the marketplaces that you guys have used already, from experience, kind of some of the major ones there. How do you see that developing over time? Are there any kind of emerging marketplaces, maybe something that we don't really consider as a main marketplace now, but something for the future that you think is potentially going to become a challenger there?
One of the ones we were talking about before, which is quite interesting, I hadn't considered, TikTok Shop. I would think much more, my sort of fast fashion world where I come from, much more relevant. But actually, Gavin, you were saying Laptops Direct.
We're one of the first retailers to go on TikTok Shop. There was a lot of challenges with going on TikTok Shop, fraud being the primary part. The AOV is £15, but if you offer a £20 voucher on the latest iPhone, funnily enough, they start selling very quickly. And surprisingly, a lot of the manufacturers aren't necessarily monitoring those channels, so it was a very quick and easy way to be able to get some products out. There's a lot of very interesting ways to be able to sell products via TikTok Shop.
Yeah, I think the other thing in terms of the trends within marketplaces, the everything shops are already there. Your Temu's, your Amazon's, all these options are there that sell literally everything you could ever imagine. I don't see those going away. You also see, or what we have seen recently is almost a consolidation in certain marketplaces with what's going on with like Matches Fashion and Yoox Net-a-Porter. Mytheresa, on the other hand, are doing very well. So you've almost got this sort of consolidation of, are certain marketplaces going to win out over others because they have a differentiator in the market for themselves in terms of how they work as a marketplace. So you'll see some of that going on. And echoing Kristen's point from this morning, the second-hand resale market, whether that's through second-hand resale from a consumer perspective or through returns going back onto a collective shop to resell through the brands as well. I think that doesn't seem like it's something that's going to go away. How that manifests in the future is going to be an interesting question. Is that going to see consolidation? Is it going to be more controlled by the brands? How do you control for the authenticity of those products as well?
Absolutely. And one thing you mentioned in there, the big elephant in the room, maybe when it comes to marketplaces, Amazon. It's there. It's not going away. I think we all know that it's a challenge at times. From your side, what are some of the pros and cons of being on Amazon? What are the difficulties there?
You've got an active market, which is a pro. A con is that it's Amazon. It can be sometimes very, very frustrating. You'd think they're a business that are there to sell products, and they are, but ultimately they're a business that are there designed for customers. So they will always side with the customers, and they're less concerned about the sale and more concerned about making sure that is a good and strong sale. So in the early days when you're starting off within Amazon, if you're not a very big name that's coming in that gets account support from them, you'll be frustrated quite quickly in the early days. If you miss a metric because a handful of products have gone out late because DX van didn't go off, then you'll find your sales start to slow down very quickly. You will find support and comments from individuals when you're trying to get through seller support can be not always coming back in English and not always making sense, and it feels like you're speaking to a brick wall at sometimes. So getting on LinkedIn, speaking to individuals, trying to generate connections within Amazon is very fruitful. Persevering through, focusing on your customer metrics, making sure you are responding and talking to customers in the time frames that you need to be able to do, being proactive around customer services, and make sure you've got a strong logistics and warehousing operation to make sure your products are going out on time. You take care of the seller metrics on the account, then your sales will slowly start to climb very, very quickly. It can be frustrating in the early days, but if you know what you're doing, you engage with the business that you're working within as a whole, get on board stakeholders from all of the various teams, from finance to warehouses to operations to logistics to marketing, then you've got a good opportunity to be successful. But the obvious drawback is it's Amazon. A customer's buying a product from Amazon. If you want to own that relationship, if you want to develop a brand, you need to have your own presence there. And yes, there's A++ content there. But when you see the stats from Amazon of how many people are actually scrolling down the page and seeing what's at the bottom, it's surprising. They have a look at that top snippet and they click on reviews, which skips them down to the bottom, and then they bounce back up to the top to be able to add to the basket or not. And so you don't have a presence there like you would if you had your own website. You had that customer's email address and permissions to be able to converse with them and tell them about yourselves as a brand, what you stand for, your products. And yeah, there's a reward in terms of sales. There's a risk in terms of not having that brand presence, and somebody else can come along with a very similar but cheaper product if you're unable to develop it.
And I mean, this is a completely different example from bathrooms and things, but my watch strap I bought from Amazon because I needed a new one. I couldn't tell you the brand, not a chance. I know I bought it from Amazon. So my relationship with this watch strap is I bought it from Amazon, not it's made by brand X. And that's not just isolated to Amazon, but any marketplace. How do you make sure your brand message lands when you're not in control of the channel you're selling it on? And part of that comes down to product experience is part of that, but how do you get that? I was going to say channel that, but that's a really bad pun. But how do you channel that through those different channels as well?
Absolutely. Talking about the product experience, but then also I think tying it back to what you were saying around the change of requirements, making sure that you're staying up to date. How can you do that? What's a way that you can push that brand image, making sure that you're delivering what you want to deliver, all that change of requirements, as Amazon are constantly changing all that all the time?
Get a Kino on board. So you've got lots of different marketplaces that are out there. You've got lots of different channels. And you've got a message that you want to get out there, but how you sell a piece of furniture on B&Q is different to how you sell a piece of furniture on Amazon to how you sell a piece of furniture on Manor Manor. They've all got very different audiences. And you may need to talk about that product more technical on one area and more bring the vision of the product to life on another area. So you need something that allows you to be able to have the same source of truth for content, but be able to differ and tailor it for the various different channels. And take Amazon and eBay as an example. You look at the product titles, you write a product title for Amazon, you stick that in eBay and you miss half of the vital information off the end because the character count difference versus what works well there doesn't work well over here. So you need a solution that allows you to be able to take your core set of data and manipulate it in a way that works for each of the individual channels.
So the short takeaway from that, as you said at the beginning, get a Kino.
Get a Kino.
I mean,
I'll get bonus points.
Yeah, no, it is definitely the starting point. Having that single source of truth in the background that you can then tailor and alter. And we were talking earlier around how you use Gen AI, so the new features in there for product descriptions. But actually, if you're going to extend that further, that product description could or should be different for a marketplace compared to your own brand website. The content you put on there, the tone of voice you use, whilst keeping it in line with your brand, you might want to include more information about the brand itself, as I said before. Or you might be tailoring it to a slightly different audience in terms of socioeconomic factors, demographics, geographies, and so forth. So the way you describe a product could be slightly different. And particularly if you're selling products like in Gavin's world or in Matt's world with Assa Abloy, if you're selling to a consumer, the way you describe a product will be different to how you sell it to a professional. And it'll be different to how you sell it for a professional who's a locksmith from someone who is kitting out a hotel chain. Like, there are different things which are important about those products for different people, and a lot of that goes in line with the marketplaces and channels you use to sell them. So catering in that way is one thing. The other thing I'd call out is actually the way you categorize your products as well. So even internally within Boohoo, across the brands that I looked after, the way you categorize a product for its website would vary between the websites. Depends on what their focus is between male or female customers for the primary consumers, or what type of the product they're focusing on. But each one of those websites from a web category point of view could have up to about 1,000 categories on them once you get into all the details. But Thundercat, I mentioned before, was the system we built for this because at the time we started building it, the features which are coming in Akeneo, which was mentioned earlier as well, weren't necessarily there. But we could categorize our products automatically using a rules-based logic to all those different channels. And you just set up the rules base, same product, same source data, different description because you've generated it in different ways, categorized differently because you're selling it in a different place to a different market.
So if I've understood that right, you're saying the underlying data is key.
Single source of truth, yeah. That's your bedrock, and then you can build out from there. But the actual truth about what that product is the same thing.
And I think when we were talking at the beginning about different marketplaces, as that changes, whether that's a Vinted for kind of a second-hand point of view, is that underlying data that important for the agility to move into those different marketplaces as things change, or?
Yeah, very much so. Will spoke there about my world and his world. We've actually got a couple of clients that we're working with that are going to be selling some of our brands on Debenhams very shortly. So we've been working with them to get the data in a place to be able to pass out from Akeneo to them. They can get a slightly different set of the data based around the categorization that we've got on Debenhams and how we want to be able to speak to that customer, the tone of voice around these products. And so, yes, there's going to be bathrooms on Debenhams very, very shortly, which I guess when we were talking about marketplaces earlier, this is starting to happen more and more. If you have a set of products that are there, a very easy way to bring on complementary products and make it so you become a destination, or more of a destination than you are at this moment in time, is to bring on complementary products from manufacturers or other retailers that are selling products that are similar to yours but don't necessarily overlap. So you have a way to be able to sell more products, get an understanding of what's going on, do what Amazon's been doing for the better part of the last 20 years, which is sell products, see what works, and then look at moving into that market. Brands, retailers can invite others onto their platform to share their customer base, and in the same time, they can do that with very minimal risk of having to buy in stock, research, and develop products.
For sure. You kind of touched on it a little bit there around the point of when you're moving out to these marketplaces, you gain all of these different things. When it comes to customer data, obviously the name of of Unlock today, CX with PX. When it comes to rather than the customer experience, but the customer data, that's something that maybe we start to lose slightly when we move out to those marketplaces. Is that important in your thought process when you're thinking about which marketplace you might work within or which retailer potentially?
Yes, I had to pick up the phone to a customer yesterday because their delivery of a £2,000 bath for one of our clients failed. We delivered the product for the client that's selling on the marketplace. It failed, the customer trying to get back in contact, and lo and behold, they don't accept messages from sellers. So we want to deliver this product to you. How can we arrange delivery of product? Well, the only way we can do it really is take the time to pick up the phone and speak to that customer, because we can't send anything out automated to them.
But so I guess the positive from that might be that
there's a telephone number there.
You start to gain some.
But there's the other means of contact they're trying to cut off. 4 or 5 years ago, you used to have an email address as well. Now all of that is encrypted, GDPR. Yeah.
And if you can get hold of that data, how important is that to you guys, that customer data?
If you want to, we'll be able to talk more about this, but if you want to be able to build and develop a brand, and bring it to life and create a customer base that will come back and purchase from you more frequently, you need to be able to talk to them. Email, SMS is the predominant way of being able to speak to customers. And yeah, you don't have any of that with a marketplace. Not in the same way. There's some tools that are on them, but they're fairly limited.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because if you're using it as that foothold to try and build a market, you want to know who you're selling to so that you can then build from that. And if you're not getting that information back from the marketplace, what's the other way of selling your brand? So you can almost make that second sale come directly rather than through the marketplace itself. And from there, then get brand loyalty for your products and for your sales. Because obviously selling on a marketplace costs you money. You lose however you pay for your marketplace, like you're losing margin effectively on each sale. So you want those sales to be direct if you can have them. So how can you steer the second purchase to be if the first one's happened through a marketplace? If you don't know who that customer is, how much do you know? How much have you been told through the information you get from the marketplace itself versus how much can you try and just channel it by making sure your brand is well sold so the second one does come back that way as well? So that's an interesting.
And I guess that comes back to the product experience side of it again. If you're delivering that good product experience, the chance that customer is then going to come direct to you potentially.
Exactly. It's an indirect way of getting the customer data because you can rely on the second sale. And it depends what you're selling. If you're selling beds, as we were talking earlier, you don't buy beds as frequently as you buy dresses. And you don't buy bathrooms as frequently as you buy dresses. So when is that second sale going to happen, if it is going to happen, for example?
You look at laptops direct for Buy It Direct Group. If you're selling a laptop on your own website, you can sell all of the peripherals around it. If you're selling the components, you can make sure you're selling other components that are compatible with that component. There's nothing more frustrating than seeing that same product sat on Amazon with a motherboard there and a graphics card that's not compatible with that motherboard being bundled up in a add to buy that, and you want more control. And you send a ticket through to seller support and you say that does not go with that, so you're going to end up with a return one way or another here. And it's like speaking to a brick wall. They learn over time as they start getting returns back that doesn't work with that. But that touch, that interaction doesn't exist.
And there's
not in the same way.
And there's a cost to doing that as well.
Yeah.
Obviously. The number of SKUs you've got, it will get too large. For a company like Boohoo.com has about 40,000 products, 350,000 SKUs on at any one time. Overall, our PIM implementation, Boohoo's PIM implementation, I've left, is running at
We'll
about...
do that for 2 more years.
Yeah, is running at about 4.5 million SKUs. So they're not all live at any one time, but when you've got that volume of product and it's going to multiple channels and now you're having to try and say, no, actually those can't be complements. And obviously most of the time with dresses and hats and shoes, it's up to the consumer's choice. You can gauge my ability to style. But if it's something more critical where things will not plug together, then controlling that with a large amount of SKUs becomes quite a challenge. Amongst everything else that's a challenge once you've got a marketplace and multiple channels to consider.
For sure. So I'm going to click through. I'm not going to show any key takeaways yet before I cheat and say what I think the key takeaways are.
I'm trying to read them off the screen.
No, they're too small. You're not going to be able to see them.
Your eyesight's better than mine. You've got help.
From your side, guys, what are any emerging trends, any key takeaways from the session there, things that you think are crucial to working in marketplaces? Maybe, whatever good bits you think there are to summarize.
So the most obvious one for me that sticks out is the amount of marketplaces that are opening up at this moment in time is phenomenal. It's increasing. It seems to be every week there's a new marketplace. Anybody that has 10 followers that know that brand's name seems to be opening up a marketplace. And from a commercial perspective, it makes sense. You can offer products that are around your core product set without the risks of taking on board stock. So the advice around that would be, you need your data in good shape. You need the agility to be able to move your information from here to this marketplace over there so that you can be one of the first to jump on board that platform and get an early boost in visibility. When it comes to how you appear on the various different marketplaces. Sales is key. So if you've got sales behind you, you appear very visible. So you need to move fast before everybody else gets there. You don't want to be late to the party, or else you're going to be sat at the bottom of page 2 or 3. So having your data in a great place, where you can just export it from point A to point B, is a key takeaway.
Perfect.
I think I'd echo all of that. You've got to be where your customer is. If your customer is shopping through marketplaces or shopping through other channels, TikTok Shop came along, you've got, whatever's going to be next in terms of certain generations and how they buy products. If you're in that type of product and you're targeting that demographic, you've got to be there. Otherwise, someone else is going to eat your lunch, aren't they? So you've got to be able to move quickly, as Gavin was saying. I think the other thing I would call out is be really clear on why you are doing a market. Why are you going after marketplaces? What's the purpose? What are you trying to get out of it? Are you going after growth? Are you going after reach? Are you just trying to diversify how you present yourself to customers? And then choose the right partners for you. There's no point in, if your brand is one thing, trying to sell on a marketplace that has a completely different demographic, completely different type of consumer who isn't going to be interested in your brand, because it's not going to work. And the complexities of setting up another channel, it becomes easier with tools like Akenio, of course it does. But you still have to think about how are you going to sell your product on that marketplace to that consumer. There's lots of extra work involved in that. And go after the ones that are going to make a difference. So really pick them sensibly, basically.
Fantastic. Fortunately, hopefully, quite a fair bit of that should be covered. This is very small for us there. But yeah, marketplace strategy, it's unavoidable. I think that's what you're saying there. But I'm trying to read past you as the easiest way to see the slide.
Yeah.
Making sure that you're getting high and wide to as many different customers and the most relevant customers to you. And
I feel like you didn't need to have this chat with us. You could have
I could have just presented this at the beginning. But no, thinking omni-channel in that, marketplaces are really important to get high and wide, making sure that you're getting in front of people, but that D2C is still a key place to be, and you're making sure that you're almost trying to present the right product experience on the marketplaces in order to bring that back D2C.
To a certain extent, it acts like a marketing channel. It's another way of showcasing your products to consumers. But actually, if you can make those sales happen on your own website, you make a better margin from it. Generally speaking, you're going to make a better margin. So think about it as being that foothold in all situations. Obviously, if you're in a B2B kind of world, it's slightly different. But in a B2C,
Don't be surprised if you've got a website, you appear on marketplaces. Some customers take that code, they paste and search in Google, and then find their way back to your website where you can potentially sell it for a little bit cheaper because you don't have the same marketing costs.
Exactly what I do.
Yeah.
I'm not cheap or anything, but like that.
That's the fifth key takeaway.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Agility is key. We've touched on Amazon constantly changing of requirements as different things pop up, whether that be Vinted, whether it be TikTok Shop, whatever it is, making sure that you've got that strong underlying PIM data ready to manipulate, whether that's manually, whether that's via AI, whatever that may be, making sure that you're ready to hit the relevant channels. And then, obviously, finally, product experience. I think if we didn't mention PX at least one more time, then I'd be missing the mark within CX to PX, wouldn't I? But it's more important than ever. Just because you're not necessarily clearly owning the sale, it doesn't mean that you're not owning the product experience that you're delivering.
And on a marketplace, you don't own the customer experience. Not completely, but you do own your product experience. So make sure you own it.
You have a box, and you can control what's inside that box. So you need to make sure it counts. That box is slightly different on different channels, so you need to make sure that you're able to flex your content that you have for those various locations.
Fantastic. And I think on those two comments, that is the perfect place to call it there. Thank you very much for your time today, guys.